What is up, BookMan Club? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're reviewing Red Rising by Pierce Brown, a fan favorite of BookTube and Book Talk, and let's just say I understand why. Let's get into the review. Let's let's start with some spoiler free thoughts on Red Rising by Pierce Brown. What I thought about the novel without giving anything important away. First, we have here a sci-fi dystopian novel. Definitely man versus the society, the oppressive society that he's placed in. So think like Ayn Rand, but I like this book and this author more personally. This would be considered, I would say, softer sci-fi than hard sci-fi. You're not going to get boggled down with a bunch of like physics and technical science terms. Pierce Brown sort of just puts a title on an item and you sort of get an idea how it works. For example, in this novel, there's things called grav boots, and you sort of figure out that they're just boots that can conquer gravity. Most of you who have heard about Red Rising have definitely heard of the comparison of it to Hunger Games on Mars. And I think that's a fair comparison, especially considering a development that happens about almost halfway through the book and then continues through the rest. Is this YA? I think a young adult reader would really like Red Rising. I also think an adult reader would also find a lot to enjoy about the story. Admittedly, the writing style in Red Rising took me a few chapters to get used to. We are getting the story told from the point of view of a 16 to 18-year-old. So once I could sort of wrap my mind around how that affects the point of view and the voice of the story, I could really get behind it. And it really makes it a quick read. I haven't toured through a book like this since I think like Captain Underpants. On a serious note, though, if I had to compare the writing style in this Pierce Brown to maybe a classic sci-fi author, I would say it's definitely more in the lane of like a Ray Bradbury. And so, needless to say, I really did enjoy the writing and the prose in Red Rising. Like I mentioned previously, it's definitely soft sci-fi, and I think that's something that it makes helps me make that connection to a Ray Bradbury. It's short, the prose isn't too flowery, but it gets to the point. It gets the point across. It's effective writing, and I really enjoyed that about it. I think that's why I went through and read the book so quickly. There's a ton of named characters in this book, and a good selection of them are pretty great. I really enjoyed a lot of the characters. Considering the size of the cast, there were a few characters who felt like one note, or maybe were sort of just to function as a means to drive the plot forward. But I think that's sort of just a product of having such a wide cast and so many characters. You can't give all of them the attention that they need to fully flesh out their characters. But I think the ones that he did, specifically the point of view character in this one, I think he does a really good job of fully realizing. We will now be entering the spoiler section of this video. So if you do feel inclined to do so, you can go and read the full book and then come back and see what a low red YouTuber with 10 subscribers has to say about it. But yeah, we're about to hop in to see what I really thought about some of the spoiler territory of this novel. To start this section off, there's just one scene I have to get off my chest. As soon as I read it, I knew I had to discuss it or talk about it on this video. And that's the scene where Darrow confronts Titus and eventually kills him later, but he finds out that Titus is a red. I really love this scene. I love its placement in the book because it happens towards the middle, near the maybe later middle of the story, if I remember correctly, maybe around page 200 or something like that. But we really get to see Darrow, who has grown and is now a different person, talk to Darrow from like chapter 3 and 4 after EO died, or AO, however you say her name. Because Titus is the Darrow that we see in those first chapters. He like despises golds because, I mean, why wouldn't he in his situation? And then we see the Darrow in like the future now, who is like grown to be pretty good friends with some golds and actually start to see maybe that not all golds are bad or evil, maybe just products of their system that they're raised in. And I really love that scene and Pierce Brown putting it where it is because it really does show that Darrow has grown as a character, and it's not Pierce Brown saying, "Hey, he's grown as a character." It's him using a scene to let us know this is what he used to be, this is what he is now. And I really enjoyed that for Darrow's characterization. One thing I'd also like to discuss, since we're on the topic of Darrow, the main character, I've read some things online of people saying that he's like a Mary Stew, and I do think part of that's true, depending on the perspective you have of him coming into this. I saw a Goodreads review. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description or put. No, I don't have the skills to edit it onto the video, but you get the gist, talking about how Darrow is sort of just like supposed to represent the working man, but he's just like perfect and great at everything. But I think this idea of him just being like the average working low red man was sort of dispelled in like the first couple of chapters, honestly. I mean, first we know that he's a hell diver and you have to have insane skill and be like brave and good, hand dexterity, stuff like that to be a hell diver. He also talks about is he arrogant? Yes. I mean, would I be friends with Darrow? Maybe not. I mean, he is kind of a prick sometimes, a part of my language. But I think off the bat, we sort of are told about this idea that he is like more talented than the rest of his community, that he does have like sort of like this talent, spark, and potential. So when he goes on later in the story and achieves great things in the Institute, like playing the game, the Hunger Games that they do, it doesn't feel like it just feels like him sort of fulfilling his potential, not him just being perfect. And I mean, he does make mistakes during the story. It's not like everybody bows to him. We see him lose to Cassius. We see at times him even understand that these golds who've been raised as golds are better at the blade than him and could dismount him and or dismantle him in fights easily. And he admits that, and then we get to see it too in scenes. So I wouldn't say he's like a Mary Stew. I mean, I guess unless you have the notion that he is sort of just a working average low red, but obviously that's not the case. I feel like it would be impossible to do a Red Rising review without mentioning the Howlers and Severo. Severo definitely ended up being one of my more favorite characters, along with Mustang. Um, just him being sort of this like quirky, wiry, you know, from the surface, it looks like he couldn't do any damage. I mean, he looks like a pitiful kid, but then he's actually super effective and deadly and gets the job done. And that I really enjoy that about him. That's really cool. And he sort of has like this rough exterior, but he secretly, really likes Darrow and is his allegiance with him is strong. The reveal that Fitchner was his dad, though, really didn't land for me like I imagined it should have. Um, I don't know. It just felt like maybe it was a twist that Pierce Brown threw in there just for the sake of a twist. I guess you could see sort of the similarities between Fitchner and how he talks and how he acts to Severo, but it just wasn't a twist that really caught me off guard. And I was like in awe, like some of the other twists in this book. From a writing standpoint, one great decision that Pierce Brown I think made early on in this book is having Darrow kill Julian, Cassius's brother, because for the remainder of the story, and I assume what's to come in future stories, the interactions with him, it's like you have this aching, nervous anxiety feeling inside you because you see them start to become. Well, at first, it starts as Darrow's terrified because he thinks if Cassius finds out, he's going to kill them. And Cassius also is obviously a formidable opponent. But then they develop a friendship, a pretty good like brotherhood, and then you get that achy feeling because not for tension, but that you feel bad because he doesn't know. He's clueless that Darrow is his brother, and what if he finds out? Which eventually he does because the proctors uh, give the Jackal the hollow cube that shows him killing him, and that affects their whole relationship. But that's one thing in this book that I'm really excited to see how it develops in further books because we see them leave off as characters. Uh, Cassius spitting in his face and saying next time we see each other, like we're just throwing hands on sight. And so I'm really excited to see how that might play out in Golden Sun or maybe Morning Star. There's a good number of deaths in Red Rising, and to be completely honest, I don't think any of them really affected me that much. I think honestly, the death that moved me the most was the Julian death because you hear him beg, and he's from a high-ranking family. He doesn't want to disappoint, and Dara just has to kill him. That death affected me. But the ones after, I didn't really feel too much. Like when Leah and Roke died, that one was, I guess, a bit sad, but I wasn't really attached to the characters that much to be totally moved by their death. Not saying that the deaths have to play this sort of role of affecting the reader, but once you use death so much, I feel like it can diminish its value, which could in a story. The story gets comparisons to Game of Thrones, and I see that. with the amount of deaths, and nobody's safe, no character's safe unless you're Darrow and you're perfect. But I don't know. I feel like a death is a very pivotal, strong thing, and it doesn't really. I didn't really feel anything for any of the deaths. Eo's death, I saw coming. I didn't expect her and him to be like a duo that goes to the surface and takes over the world. I kind of knew she had to die to sort of as the catalyst to spark him to push him into becoming what he does by the end of the book. Pax's death was a bit sad, but then again, I mean, he wasn't a character I was totally attached to or necessarily interested in, so his death did not affect me that much either. To conclude this video, my official BookMan rating, I'm going to start doing out of 10 stars, just to switch it up, guys, keep the content fresh. But I'm going to give Red Rising an 8.2 out of 10. Great read, great start. I'm really excited to see what it comes next in the series. The first book has some minor flaws, which stops it from being like a 9 or a 10. But I've heard the books only get better in the later installments. So yeah, I'm excited to see how those turn out. But yeah, Red Rising, great read, easy read. I would definitely suggest it if you're a fan of dystopia, if you're a fan of man versus the society, oppressive society, sci-fi. There's a lot of elements that work here, and I think they all work pretty well together in the setting that Pierce Brown has created through his world building with the color cast system. So yeah, Red Rising, 8.2 out of 10. Give it a read. And like, this is the part where I say to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, I'm gonna start a gaming channel. I'll put that in my channel description or maybe the description of this video somehow. And I might start uploading on there. So if you guys are interested, subscribe to that channel too. But yeah, that'll conclude this video.